How's it going? It's Ethan back again to show you how I made this chessboard. Let's jump right into it. Alright, let's check out these chess pieces in the program that I designed them in, TinkerCad.com. Now, at first, it looks like this, a big, giant mess. And then at the end, we get to these nice pieces that we actually print out later. But I want to actually go over how I made these. So, starting with kind of the general idea of every piece, I wanted the general theme to be like a hollowed out shell. So I started with this as the base of pretty much everything. Two halves of a sphere with a big hole, big void in the middle. And then I created this type of structure here as my first idea, and I was like, okay, this will be kind of like a nice kind of starting idea. So I picked kind of like a spherical top and a conical base for pretty much every piece, and I was like, okay, that'll be a good starting point. Now we can just go into each of the individual pieces. The pawn here, the most basic and shortest of them all. So the pawn, I had everything kind of come out pretty basically. Nothing too fancy with the circle part or the conical base, just a little extra flair. And then obviously on top, I've got my logo. I had to incorporate it. It's on every piece somehow, but for the pawn, it's basic, nothing too crazy, but it's up there. You can tell that it's my cheeks. Down here, the core is kind of like where I chose to represent the moves that the piece makes. I don't know why, I just figured it'd be nice to kind of hint towards it. So the pawn can move forward one or forward twice if it's in that first position at the start of the game. So I have these two different kind of heights of extrusions coming out of the center to represent the two types of moves that pawns usually make. So that's pretty much it for the pawn. I kept it pretty basic, a lot of dots and rounded edges basically. Alright, next up we've got the rook, the castle, as some people call it. And this one, it's a little bit edgier, a little less rounded, and on top, the butt has the little castle topper. I forget what that's exactly called, but it's got those kind of struts at the top. Not quite a crown, but close. And then the base is conical, but with vertical and horizontal lines mostly, instead of those toruses or donuts that I had around the base of the pawn. And then the middle has these plus or crosses in there to kind of demonstrate that they go up and down, left and right in straight lines. Overall, just kind of like an edgier version of the pawn, nothing too special here. And then the next up, we got the knight. Now the knight is, you know, pretty beefy. So I made this piece pretty beefy compared to all the other pieces. I didn't want this cone base to look exactly like the rook. I added this third one in there. And then if you look at like the side profile, that's kind of the shape of the move that this piece makes. You know, it goes over one and then two in the parallel, or I guess perpendicular direction. So kind of like that L shape movement. I kind of incorporated that into the base, and then the shape of the move itself kind of looks like a Tetris piece, but it's throughout as far as the middle segments and the holes in the top. It's pretty much everywhere. And then on top, we have kind of a little horse's mane coming out of the butt cheeks here to give it that little bit of flair that the knight pieces usually have. Alright, now the bishop here is where I started to run into a couple of problems. I didn't like the way that this looked. It's toothy, basically, but I wanted to show that, you know, they go on the diagonals, but this looks, you know, this looks toothy. And when it printed, all the teeth, instead of being, you know, if they needed to be like this, they were like this when they printed, which was not great. So this design right here with the mega teeth, I actually scrapped pretty quickly. My second idea, which was a lot better looking in my opinion, was very close to working. The only problem with this is that these petals here, these big petals here, would print wrong every single time I tried to print it out. So I had to get rid of that idea, and I didn't hate it, so I just made it a lot beefier. I put some material in between the petals on the top and bottom and kind of fixed that whole issue I was having. And then I have the X in there to show that it goes on the diagonal lines. The conical base is all diagonals with, you know, a couple of ring plateaus, and then the top, the butt cheeks here, I've got that iconic little slice right through the top and a little ball to kind of give it that classic look. Yeah, this one was the problem child of the group, I would have to say. We've got the queen with her crown. I've been told that this looks a lot like the Ice King crown from Adventure Time, which I enjoy. This one's a bit taller. This piece is interesting. It can do pretty much whatever it wants, right? So on this base here, I incorporated both the roundedness of the pawn and the straightness of the other pieces. Instead of any kind of movement direction, it's got a little infinity logo because the queen could do anything. And initially, I just wanted the little dots and whatnot designs to be on the outside of this dome here. But due to these tiny little intersections here, that wouldn't print properly. No way would that print and be structurally sound. So I have to have these kind of arms coming out of the middle and attaching to every single one, which was a pain in the butt. Yeah, this one was a huge pain, but it printed nicely. So, you know, not as bad as the bishop, I guess. All right, this is the last one, the king piece. I kept all the king characteristics that I could. The base, I just wanted to give it some more flair. So we've got a stack of rings and toruses instead of just the cone shape. The middle, this guy only moves one space, so he just gets a nice little dot in the middle. And the cutouts match the little crown piece on top, which is just the usual traditional kind of shape that I see on most king pieces. Alright, that's pretty much it for the design of these. I just tried to theme them all with what they do. I had to kind of incorporate all the traditional aspects with the general design that I was making, and I think they turned out really well. I think they turned out really nice. And then, you know, onto the printing, which is a whole another story. Some of these printed so well, some of them did not print very well. I had to, I guess, rework a couple things with these three here, the bishop, queen, and king, and to make sure they were structurally sound, because even though this is like a miracle technology, it doesn't always miraculously work the way you think it's gonna. So I had to make them a lot thicker, put some more structure in there, and then we were good to go with that. Now that we're done designing the pieces, it's time to print them. Gotta shake up the big tub of goo. It's a UV reactive resin. It hardens when you expose it to UV light, but when you start, it's just a pile of goo. Reminds me of Venom from Marvel Universe. Then after you pour all the goo, You throw on the lid, go to print, and then pick any of the files that you've got selected or loaded up on the USB drive. Hit go, and then this arm slowly descends into the puddle of goo until it touches the base, and then it freezes layer by layer. And for the pawn in particular, it was about 1,600 layers of freezing it would have to do, and it took around 6 hours and some change. And afterwards they come out with all kinds of base structure and whatnot around them to keep it structurally sound while printing. Obviously it's not perfect. There are some imperfections that I had to fix later, but they come out looking really good. Looking real nice. And then after you take off those support structures, you can kind of see where this is going. These are kind of just taken apart so I could wash them and clean them up. They still got some material on the inside that I've got to get rid of. And I've been using these tiny little, they're basically big toothpicks, but they're skewers. They're not quite large skewers, but they're not quite toothpicks. They're in between. And I use that to kind of get all those support structure bits out of there later on. You can see it's all kind of interwoven and kind of tangled up inside of everything. But they come out nice and smooth. Here's a little view of just a table full of printed parts. Got to prime them up nice and gray so that when you color them, the colors are bright. And speaking of colors, I've chosen to use Emperor's Children Pink, Baharoth Blue, and Dorn Yellow of Citadel colors. They're some of my favorite paints for miniature painting, and they work really, really well on plastics. Here I am showing off the pieces. There's no white and black. It's going to be blue versus pink. So you can kind of see how each piece is flipped. You know, the flipped version of its counterpart, pink on top, blue on bottom. But the yellow components kind of stay the same. And I feel like these match the board pretty well. After all is said and done, I'm like really, really happy with the brightness of the paints, and everything came out really nicely. Obviously, these weren't printed in this color, but I wish I could have printed it like that. I wonder if there is a machine that does the UV pool with multiple colors. Probably not, that would be crazy, but you can with the filament printers, some of them. Maybe one day I'll investigate that, but I like the smoothness that I get from these resin ones. Yeah, after all the sanding and painting and priming and whatnot, I think these all turned out pretty good. And then if I ever see any scuffs or splashes where they're not supposed to be, I'm just gonna touch them up and keep them nice, because this is, you know, this took me a lot of work to make this. I think I did a little bit of a calculation, and if I wanted to like actually sell this to somebody for the time and effort and material that I put in, I would have to charge, honestly, I think I said I would have to charge them $2,500 for this, just for the materials and everything. Here's a shot of the board itself. I actually got this painted up at a ceramic shop called the Bee's Knees. It's ceramic, and I painted it myself. Took all day. And if I totaled everything up, the labor and the materials, this honestly, I'd have to charge like $2,500 for this. It was a very expensive project, but thank you for sticking through to the end. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Please come through to my website at www.thick216.com. All my favorite designs are there. Come through to my Instagram where I have all of my published works, only bangers on my Instagram. My Redbubble page features all of my best designs on some wonderful merch. All kinds of clothing, mouse pads, hats, anything you can think of. Shower curtains, stickers, laptop cases, phone cases. Here I am displaying a nice hoodie, classic design, a pillow. Who could do without a pillow? Nobody. Everyone needs a pillow. Very soft. We've also got prints. any kind of print you could want: posters, metal prints, framed prints. We've got zipper bags, zipper pouches. Put every pencil, every pen you've ever had in there. Mouse pad, desk pad, game mats. Anything you could think of. I've even got a bath mat and a shower curtain. Also come through to my TikTok, small videos there. And then my YouTube for all my full-length videos. And Fiverr if you want me to make art for you. Thanks once again for sticking through to the end. This has been an awesome project. I've wanted to make my own chess pieces ever since I first got access to a 3D printer in high school, and today I finally made it true, made that dream come true literally 8 years later. Okay, so this is great. I'm so happy with it. I can't believe it's finally sitting here on my table. After all these years of not being able to have a 3D printer around to make this, it's really nice to see. So thank you very much. Come follow me on my socials to check out my other art. Have a great day.